very good evening. You're watching Prime Time News here on TV1, coming to you live and direct from the News First studios here in Colombo. For the News First team, I am Ruhaz Irfan. Before we move on with our bulletin, here's a look at your headlines for this evening.
News First headlines. Main sponsor.
Durdens Hospital, dedicated to you.
Who prepared the proposal to bring new laws to suppress the media?
මේ ගිටිය නිමල් සිරිපාල සිල්ලා මැතිතුමා බන්දුලු ගුණවර්ධන මැතිතුමා මනුෂ්‍ය නානායක්කාර මැතිතුමා සහ කේලිය රඹුක්කැල්ල මැතිතුමා ඒක ඔබතුමාගේ අවබෝධයේ ප්‍රමාණය අනුව ගන්න තීන්දුවන්නේ ඒක යුක්තව තියෙනවා සාකච්ඡා කරලා බලන්න.
Civil activists call for UN intervention against media suppression laws. Dallas concerned over reforming state-owned enterprises. Highlights attempts to share SOEs among friends. Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa says the SLPP should be given ministerial positions. Finance Minister issues Gazette making it mandatory to open tax file for everyone over the age of 18. Sri Lanka's paddy cultivation affected by 4 types of caterpillars. Mihintale gears up for Poson celebrations. Mihindu Perahara parades the streets.
News First headlines. Main sponsor.
Durdens Hospital, dedicated to you.
Now on to your top story this evening. Minister of Justice Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa said that the proposed Broadcasting Regulatory Commission legislation that grants statutory powers to imprison journalists, impose fines on them and to even revoke the licenses issued to broadcasters will be discussed with the media institutions on the 7th of June 2023. The drafting of the legislation established a broadcasting authority was carried out by a cabinet-appointed subcommittee led by Justice Minister Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa.
The proposed Broadcasting Regulatory Commission legislation was a point raised at a media briefing at the Justice Ministry in Colombo on Friday.
It was the Ministry of Mass Media that informed us of the need for a Broadcasting Regulatory Commission Act. All broadcasting licenses in Sri Lanka were being given on a temporary basis. They can be cancelled at any time. It was given out for 1 year. When you look at those provisions, they are not in line with the broadcasting policy in the country. Radio stations have been given permits under the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Cooperation Act. While these are temporary permits, they have been given to several institutions during the reign of successive governments, but under different conditions. They were not given based out on quality or a certain policy. The Ministry of Mass Media brought this act to the cabinet to establish some sort of quality. We prepared it through a cabinet subcommittee. We have sent out those documents to all media institutions. This is not a draft. These are just proposals. We have summoned the Ministry of Mass Media on the 7th. After we discuss with media organizations and decide on what is a proper broadcasting policy for Sri Lanka, then this will become a draft. Minister Nimal Siripala de Silva, Bandula Gunawardhana, Manusha Nanayakara and Keheliya Rambukwella. Although there is a need, that is why I said this is not a draft. We need the opinions of media organizations to prepare a draft. That is a decision you make based on what you understand. You are not the final arbiter on the law in this country, are you? So leave it open and we will discuss it.
Mahinda Rajapaksa, the leader of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, which represents a majority in the ruling faction, expressed his position.
What is the new piece of legislation that Sri Lanka is trying to introduce for the media. According to the document prepared by the cabinet-appointed subcommittee led by Justice Minister Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa, something very serious is being prepared with regard to the media. It proposes for the establishment of a broadcasting regulatory commission consisting of 5 members. The commission will appoint its own investigating committee. If reports detriment to national security, national economy and public order are published by broadcasters, the Broadcasting Regulatory Commission will be able to revoke and temporarily suspend the license of the broadcaster. In addition, the investigating committee of the Broadcasting Regulatory Commission will have the power to obtain a court order and raid media institutions. If the proposed legislation is passed in its original form, a complaint would not even be necessary to launch an investigation on a media institution. This serious piece of proposed legislation was taken up during the Mavata program on Sirasa TV. Former BASL President, President's Council, Salia Pires, expressed serious concern over the proposed legislation.
This can pose a threat to revoke licenses if the government is not pleased with the reports of a media entity or if the government has an issue with regard to the criticism. So every year these media institutions will have to wonder if they would get the license to operate next year. This commission will also have the power to ensure that true and accurate information is being provided by the service providers. So what is the truth? If a service provider says, here is the truth, and the government is engaged in fraud and corruption, the commission can say that it is not the case, and reporting it is not the truth. So who will regulate the truth from false? The viewers must decide true from false. That is the freedom to think. The only way to control the freedom to think is to block the flow of information. The draft that has been made is marred with a plethora of issues. Certain rights can be limited by law with regard to national economy. However, there is no provision with regard to freedom of speech. Let's take the economic crisis for example. The Commission can decide that reporting on depleting foreign reserves is detrimental to the national economy. They will try to block such reports from being aired. The provision of such powers would directly impact the freedom of expression. The freedom of expression has an impact on every other fundamental right that we have.
Ramindu Pereira, a senior lecturer at the Open University of Sri Lanka, also expressed concerns.
The government is trying to take away the democratic space. It is a democratic right for the people to engage in protests. However, for the first time ever, processions are banned in the Colombo city. In addition, laws are being used against those who maintain opposing views. Next, we don't have elections. We also have a culture where the independence of independent bodies are not respected. We need to look at this proposed legislation with all those factors in mind.
The citizens of the People's Struggle Movement made a formal request to the United Nations requesting for immediate intervention as the government is attempting to suppress the media via a broadcasting regulatory commission.
Sri Lanka is a member of the UN and seeks immediate intervention of the United Nations with regard to the legislation that the government with Justice Minister Vijayadasa Rajapaksa is trying to introduce to suppress the people's democracy. Media is the only avenue for the people to exercise their right to information. President Ranil Wickremesinghe and the government is trying to do away with democracy. We wonder if Ranil Wickremesinghe wants to be like Hitler, Mussolini or even Pol Pot. We do not care if it is Hiru, Sirasa, Derana, Swarnavahini, Rupavahini or even ITN. The government is adopting a common policy to suppress the media. The government must understand that it cannot rule like dictators forever. Such rulers were chased away by the people.
Political parties responded to the president's special statement.
75 years have passed. A leader who was Prime Minister for at least 6 terms during the past 75 years and was consistently a policymaker for 40 years is saying he won't allow anyone to disrupt the country. Who disrupted the country? Does this mean that he will not allow the Rajapakshas to come to power once again? Does it mean that there will be no room for democracy in the country in the future? The people are expecting an explanation. He said the country will be uplifted by 2048. It is internationally accepted that per capita income income in a developed nation is $12,000. The per capita income, which is at $3,400, will be taken to $12,000. According to the IMF interpretation, if the value of the economy in 2028 or the GDP is $89 billion, it should grow by 12% every year within the 20 years from 2028 to 2048. Can this be done? Is there a proper program, or is this a mere propaganda document like Regaining Sri Lanka that was presented in 2015? Don't slander. This is math. When Wickramasinghe was the Ministry of Industry, he brought a bill to convert state-owned enterprises into companies. 80 institutions were taken over. What happened to those 80 institutions? These were not given in a transparent manner. They were given to ministers' children, wives and close friends of the United National Party at the time. There is reasonable doubt that they will do the same again.
එදා හිටපු එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂ සමීප මිත්‍ර ගජ මිතුරු සාධාරණ සැකයක් තියෙනවා මේ නැවත කරන්න හදන්නේ ඒකද කියලා.
The Samagi Jana Balawegaya also responded to the president's statement.
We would like to remind Ranil Wickramasinghe that when uplifting this country, the law should also be enforced against those who push this country into the brink of destruction. Are you asking the people to simply forget about enforcing the law against those responsible for what happened to this country? You are protecting them. On fiscal reforms, he said that unnecessary spending will be curtailed further. A cabinet that expands by the day is what is unnecessary, but it is never cut down. Every other things, including medicine, books, Poson festival expenses, are cut down. Who created the slogan selling the country? It is a group that stands with him. We are concerned whether economic reforms would lead to the profit-making institutions being shared among their close associates. The SJB will rise against it. State-owned enterprises need to be restructured. However, it needs to be done in a transparent manner and they must follow the proper tender procedure.
Former Sri Lankan President Mahinda Rajapaksa said it would rise to award SLPP MPs with ministerial positions.
පාක්ෂිකයන් කලකිරීමෙන් ඉන්නේ අයිකොත් වැඩ කරන කට්ටියට අමාත්‍ය දුරු නොලැබීම පිළිබඳව ඔබතුමා මේ කොයි ආකාරයෙන්ද ඉන්නේ?
ඉතින් ඒක දින්න පුළුවන් නම් හොඳයි.
ජනාධිපතිතුමා පත් වෙලා ඉන්නේ ඔබතුමාලගේ සහායයෙන්.
ඔය ඉතින් අපේ සහාය තිබුණා. පත් වෙන්න එච්චරයි.
Reports have surfaced about an order that was issued making it mandatory to open a tax file for every single person above the age of 18 at the Department of Inland Revenue. The President, in his capacity as the Minister of Finance, had issued a gazette on the 31st of March under the powers vested with him through the Inland Revenue Act. According to the gazette notification, everyone above the age of 18 as at the 31st of December 2023 should open a tax file with effect from the 1st of January 2024. After the 1st of January 2024, all citizens should open a tax file upon completing the age of 18. In addition, it will also be mandatory for those working in 14 different fields to open tax files at the Department of Inland Revenue. They are doctors registered with the Sri Lanka Medical Council, members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Sri Lanka, members of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, members of the Sri Lanka Institute of Engineers, members of the Association of Professional Bankers, members of the Sri Lanka Institute of Architects, members of the Institute of Quality Surveyors of Sri Lanka, attorneys, people who registered their businesses at divisional secretariats, people who have vehicles registered at the Department of Motor Traffic other than three-wheelers, motorbikes and hand tractors, people who have purchased or acquired any lands by virtue of deeds, employees whose monthly contribution from both employee and employer to any provident fund is more than 20,000 rupees, any individual who obtains approval for a building plan from a local authority, any other individual who receives payment of 100,000 per month or 1,200,000 rupees for 12-month period for providing any service in Sri Lanka. This order to open new tax files was issued against a backdrop where the payee tax for those who earn above 100,000 rupees was increased between 6% to 36%.
Leader of the House and Minister Susil Premajayantha elaborated on the order to open new tax files.
A small portion of the total taxpayers are paying taxes. Simply because a tax file is opened does not mean everyone must pay taxes. However, when the files are opened, we have an understanding on the tax net. If not, those paying taxes will be overtaxed, and those who are supposed to pay tax evade paying their taxes. Since the time of the kings, the treasury operates on tax, and those funds are used for welfare.
The Sri Lankan government has considered relaxing import restrictions.
We suspended 1,216 HS codes and 350 of them relate to vehicles and parts. We are engaged in a study on these products. It is clear that our reserves have strengthened and we have around $3 billion. There is an oversupply of dollars in the market as well. Therefore, we are considering on relaxing import restrictions. However, we will not immediately relax on non-essentials and products that will replace local production.
Fuel queues emerged once again at some filling stations on Friday. The reason for the formation of queues was that some filling stations failing to place orders ahead of the fuel price revision.
A long queue of vehicles lined up at the Lanka IOC filling station in Narayanpeta on Friday morning. Fuel queues were also witnessed in Matara on Friday morning. Several filling stations in Badulla were closed for the day due to the non-availability of fuel, and long queues were seen leading up to filling stations with stocks of fuel. A long queue of vehicles was seen leading up to the Lanka IOC filling station in Kotugodalla Kandy.
ඒ වුණාට මේන් ආපුවාම පස්සේ අපි පොලිමේ පෑදුක තුනක් කට්ට කරනවා. හැම සෙට් එකකට ගියාම හැම සෙට් එකම එක්ක නැහැ කියලා බෝඩ් එක නැත්නම් පොලිමේ.
This was the situation at filling stations in Gampala. Similar scenes were witnessed in Vaunia and Batiklo. The Ceylon Petroleum Private Tankers Owners Association said there is no delay in the distribution process. Tankers are transporting fuel without any setbacks. Issues in fuel must be addressed to Lanka IOC or CPC. This situation will ease by Saturday evening. The public need not panic over this. There are lots of orders and there is congestion in delivering them. That is why we see queues at filling stations. For the third day in a row, we are seeing fuel queues. In addition to the MPs and ministers, their associates own more filling stations. The CPC is always informed about filling stations not placing orders. Therefore, they did not send the fuel to the filling stations in order to protect their friends and to force the people to access the relief by waiting in line. The fuel prices were reduced based on excise duty imposed on all filling stations. Petrol should have been reduced by 40 rupees and not by 15 rupees. If our calculations are correct, it should have been reduced by at least 80 rupees and diesel by at least 70 rupees. Power and Energy Minister Kanchana Wijesekara said that instructions were given to CPC and CPSTL to continue fuel deliveries on Saturday and Sunday this week to supply sufficient stocks to all fuel stations.
News first with the people.
More news will come your way after this short commercial break. Stay tuned with us.
When a heart attack strikes, every minute makes the difference between life and death. With the right care and treatment at the hand of the most skilled surgeons and medical professionals. With the perfect environment for recovery. Darden's Heart Centre, dedicated to you.
Welcome back to the news. It was on Poson full moon Poyo Day that Buddhism was introduced to Sri Lanka by Mahinda Arahat. Buddhist devotees across the island will be celebrating this momentous day tomorrow. Several religious programs are to be held across the island in celebration of the Poson Poya.
Sri Lanka went through a cultural revolution with the introduction of Buddhism by a delegation led by Mahinda Arahat in 236 BC. The main center of tomorrow's Poson celebration is Mihintale, the ancient monastic complex where the Mahinda Arahat preached his first sermon. Large crowds of pilgrims were arriving in the ancient capital Anuradhapura throughout the day today. The Poson Maha Perahera, which is considered to be the first ever Perahera in the country, is ready to parade the streets tonight.
මෙවරත්
This time too, with the help of all the Buddhists across the country and the world, the lighting ceremony is being held today at the Mihintale Rajamaha Vihara in a much more splendid manner than ever before. We expected the Poson Maha Perahara to parade the streets tonight at 8 p.m.
Sirasa TV is ready to bring you all the religious programs that will be held tomorrow, centering the Mihintale sacred site. Devotees also flooded the Atamasthana in the ancient city of Anuradhapura today. Anuradhapura District Secretary Janaka Jayasundara said that a special program is in place to facilitate the pilgrims. Meanwhile, the Damsaviya Poson zone will begin tomorrow, centering around the Magastota Sri Senadanandaramaya in Nuwara. Devotees who visit the Damsaviya Poson zone on the 5th of this month can pay homage to the sacred relics of Lord Buddha.
All the necessary arrangements have been made for the devotees who come to worship the sacred relics. A particularly large pandal has been built in the Poson area. Also, several types of lanterns have been prepared. We invite all Sri Lankans to visit the Nuwara Poson zone.
The sacred relics displayed at the Damsaviya Poson zone are brought from the Sri Padmananda Vihara in Gaul.
The sacred relics that were gifted by the King Chulalankara of Thailand in the 19th century to the then chief incumbent, Venerable Bulatgama Dhammalankara Thero, are being taken to the Nuwara Poson zone. This is a rare opportunity for all the Buddhists in Sri Lanka and across the world to pay reverence to these relics.
The Damsaviya Poson zone will begin on Saturday the 3rd in Nuwara and several events including a pandal display and lantern display will take place close to the Gregory Lake. The Shraddha Bivandana Atkanda Poson Mangalya 2023 will commence at the Atkanda Rajamaha Vihara in Kurunegala on Saturday the 3rd. Sirasa TV is the official media partner for the event. Devotees attending the event that will go on until the 6th of June will be able to pay reverence to the sacred relics and also witness Poson events. The Sirasa Namami Poson zone will take place on Saturday and Sunday at the Dipanama Broadcasting Complex. This Poson zone will feature a number of attractions including a digital pandal, dansal, lanterns and devotional song performances.
The 18th United Nations Day of Vesak Celebration 2023 took place in Thailand, and Sri Lankan Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena was one of the special invitees for the event.
Buddhist wisdom coping with global crisis is the theme for the 18th United Nations Day of Vesak Celebration 2023 in Thailand. A number of Buddhist leaders, scholars and monks from all over the world joined the 18th United Nations Day of Vesak celebrations.
Sri Lanka in the last 10 months have let go of decades-long extreme economic policies and have adopted a central path of rebuilding the country. This has tremendously helped Sri Lanka to show great resilience and regain global confidence to continue steer ahead in the central path. If an individual or a nation could live anana or debt-free, the individual or the country could attain 4 kinds of happiness. Therefore, let this August Assembly unanimously call and give attention to a universal moratorium as a result of unprecedented COVID pandemic, which was never heard, seen or imagined by humankind. This is fundamentally the most ethical relief that could be granted to millions of the worried minds world over.
The United Nations in 1999 recognized the Day of Vesak as an international event to acknowledge the contribution that Buddhism has made and continues to make to the spirituality of humanity.
Sri Lanka's Yala paddy harvest is threatened by the spread of 4 different types of caterpillar damaging rice plants. This devastating situation is being reported from multiple parts of the island. Sri Lanka's paddy fields in Polonnaruwa, Madirigiriya, Dimbulagala, Chilau, Kottukachi and Aanamadu Inginimittiya have been threatened by the spread of a species of caterpillar that directly impact the rice plants. These caterpillars have also spread to Udayala in Hambantota, Potankadu in Kantale, Batiklo, Mullathiev and Kilinochchi. According to local farmers, the caterpillar numbers have increased across paddy fields in Pottukadu, Akbopura and Peramadu.
It's been almost 30 days since the rice plants grew, and this is the best time for these caterpillars. The farmers have been rendered helpless. When we go to the stores, they provide us with various types of oil, but none of those products have been effective.
These are the rice fields located in the Udayala area in Hambantota. Agriculture officers visited these fields on Friday to inspect the situation.
Certain animals are preventing the spread, and we assume it will be okay within a few days. If not, the Agriculture Ministry needs to be held accountable. Once they emerge, they will only survive for a few days. The spread can be controlled with water-based solutions.
These caterpillars also spread in the Chinnavali area in Patiklo. The Rice Research Development Institute in Batalakoda said that 4 different types of caterpillars are spreading across Sri Lanka's rice fields.
This situation existed before. However, in 2017, it reached alarming levels. We have received reports that the spread has reached levels that are harmful economically. We have identified 4 different types of caterpillar that come out of the eggs laid by the Lepidoptera moth. In Sri Lanka, they are commonly known as Godavella. This situation arises during the monsoon that is experienced after a long dry spell. The present environment is most favorable for these species.
How does one identify that caterpillars have caused damage?
Part of the stalk or the main stem has been eaten by the caterpillar, appearing as white egg yolks on the stalk or main stem of the rice plant. Small black-headed green worms clustering on leaves. If identified at the initial stage, these species spend about 5 or 6 larval stages in their life circle within 15 to 25 days. Therefore, we can control the first 2 events very easily for the most sensitive environment. But when going to the 3rd, 4th, 5th stage, the caterpillars become brown and strong. The amount of food they eat increases greatly, and these caterpillars, which are active at night, have the ability to eat a large amount.
What should be done to control the situation? From 2 weeks onwards, the crop should be checked regularly. When there is damage, the field should be filled with water from time to time. In order to control the rapid movement, a shallow trench should be cut around the ridge. The field should be kept free from weeds at all time. If there is a low population density, they can be caught and destroyed by hand.
We can use the pesticide called Spinoterum at the rate of 5 grams per liter. Also, you can use emamethine benzoate, that too at the rate of 6 grams per 16 liters of water. Also, chlorantraniliprole insecticide can be used. The insecticide called plebendiamide can be used. We have recommended several such insecticides.
Did the organic fertilizers affect the spread of these caterpillar species?
Many people ask us if the main reason for the damage caused by the Godavella is the application of organic materials. But at this time, it should be very clear that we cannot confirm such a factor.
The Agriculture Minister said that the ministry has given full support to control the situation.
It has been reported to me that this disease can be controlled. Also, if financial provisions are required according to the need, they will also be provided.
A Pakistan Navy frigate entered the port of Colombo on Friday.
The Pakistan naval ship Shah Jahan arrived at the port of Colombo on a formal visit. The visiting ship was welcomed by the Sri Lanka Navy in compliance with naval traditions. PNS Shah Jahan is a 134.1 meter long frigate which is manned by a crew of 169. She is commanded by Captain Adnan Laghari TI. During the ship's stay, the crew will take part in several programs organized by the Sri Lanka Navy with a view to promoting cooperation and goodwill between 2 navies. They are also expected to visit some of the tourist attraction in the country. Concluding her official visit, Shah Jahan will depart the island on the 4th of June and she is expected to engage in a passage exercise with the Sri Lanka Navy ship off Colombo.
A crew from Al Arabiya Embassy is embarking on an extensive 8-day shooting project in Sri Lanka.
Their primary objective is to promote Sri Lanka as a premier destination for Middle Eastern travelers. With their lenses focused on capturing mesmerizing footage and compelling stories, the upcoming program Al Afain will be broadcasted on Shahid the largest streaming platform in the Middle East. The crew members arrived in the country yesterday.
A study conducted by a team of researchers from the University of Peradeniya and the University of Kelaniya has shown that an astonishing 39% young Sri Lankans between the ages of 10 and 24 years are suffering from depression. The study has revealed alarming statistics at the highlighting the magnitude of the mental health issue within the country.
According to a comprehensive report by a team of scientific researchers, an incredible 39% of young Sri Lankans are suffering from depression. The team from the University of Peradeniya and the University of Kelaniya evaluated 33 studies, including over 52,000 Sri Lankans, over a period of 20 years. The findings were published in the Journal of Social Psychiatry and Psychiatric Epidemiology in Germany. The research team, comprised of Dr. Inosha Udara Alvis, a lecturer from the Department of Community Medicine at the University of Peradeniya, Dr. A.K.A.B. Baminivatta, a lecturer from the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Kelaniya, and Professor Muru Chandra Dasa, a consultant child and adolescent psychiatrist from the University of Kelaniya.
So if you have any idea that depression is something like a fleeting thought of sadness, it's actually something much more complex and something different to that. With depression, you have like a set of symptoms that tend to persist for a prolonged period of time, and they have a very big impact on your functioning. So you may have low energy, you may have low interest, you may not be able to concentrate properly, and that has a big impact on your day-to-day life. And then this persists, that turns into what we call a depressive disorder. What we are interested about is what is health problems and the issues that are in the community, as opposed to the problems or the issues that you find within clinical setups or in hospitals. So in this line, I have conducted a number of researches. Very recently, we did another systematic review with regard to stigma towards mental illness and other health problems. So what we call as health-related stigma in Sri Lanka. There again, we were able to identify what are the factors. Stigma is a big problem in Sri Lanka. So it's important we identify the factors that, lead to this issue. So there we were able to have a 360 angle as to the factors that influence the drivers, the determinants, the consequences of stigma in Sri Lanka, and we put it into a framework. We also did a thorough in-depth analysis into the health crisis that we recently experienced from an angle of the community. The food insecurity problems we had, the problems of other social issues that came up during the last year. So we did a thorough analysis. I have tackled a number of important social issues. If we talk about the intimate partner violence, which is like a big problem in Sri Lanka, during the pandemic situations, we had problems of trying to empower people so that they can be ready to face the challenges that came up in COVID-19. Looked at from an angle of the community and then try to understand how can we help them to gain more control of their preventive practices, of their diseases, and controlling of the diseases during the COVID-19. I mentioned a number of recent researches I did just to give you a glimpse that what would a community physician do as opposed to like a clinician, because we approach these issues from the end through the community and look at the larger population and the bearings they have on the larger population.
According to the research findings, a staggering 19.4% of the total Sri Lankan population suffers from depression. In comparison with other Asian countries, the prevalence of depression in Sri Lanka is notably higher, with only 16.1% of Asians experiencing this mental health condition. The study, which spanned from 2003 to 2023, incorporated data from 33 peer-reviewed observational studies comprising an extensive participant pool of 52,778 individuals. One of the most concerning aspects highlighted by the study is the high prevalence of depression among young individuals aged between 10 and 24 years. Shockingly, the research revealed that approximately 39% of young persons in Sri Lanka are affected by depression, indicating a distressing mental health crisis within this age group. The study also found that older individuals above 60 years experienced a prevalence rate of 18.4%, followed by maternal populations and adults aged between 25 and 60 years, with rates of 16.9% and 8.7% respectively.
The LOLC Divisavya program that aims to support the education of Sri Lankan children continued in the Monaragala district on Friday.
The LOLC Divisavya program delivers school books and stationery to the most impoverished students in the country. This worthy initiative is a collaboration between the LOLC group and the Ministry of Education. The LOLC Divisavya program took place at the Bibila Education Zone in the Monaragala district. School books and stationery items were delivered among students at the Kotagama Primary Vidyalaya, Urugala Primary Vidyalaya, Gonatalava Primary Vidyalaya, Pulgahapitiya Primary Vidyalaya, Alugalge Primary Vidyalaya and several other schools. School books and stationery items were delivered to the students at the Rathugala Primary Vidyalaya and the Dehigala Tamil Primary Vidyalaya. LOLC Divisavya continues to support the future of Sri Lanka.
A new product was launched today by ICL Brands Private Limited, a subsidiary of the Capital Maharaja Group.
The launch of the Nivdosha Ayurveda line of medicinal products was held at the Stein Studios in Ratmalana today. The products launched included a medicinal drink and a medicinal balm. 10 medicinal herbs had been used in producing these products.
The Mullen Law Group launched Law Media on the 1st of June.
Law Media is the 7th independently managed strategic vertical, following the formation of the group's 6 other strategic verticals. The group is set to launch its 8th strategic vertical, Law Go, at the end of the year. Sabri Hanis joins the Mullen Law Group as Vice President and Director of Law Media.
Kenji Okamura, Deputy Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, said that Sri Lanka's economic recovery remains challenging.
Kenji Okamura, Deputy Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, said as Sri Lanka navigates its way through the economic crisis, it remains imperative to protect the poor and the most vulnerable that have been disproportionately affected by the crisis. He said that the economic reform program aims to achieve macroeconomic stabilization, restore debt sustainability, safeguard financial stability, strengthen governance and protect the vulnerable. He added that Sri Lanka's economy is showing tentative signs of improvement, in part due to the implementation of critical policy actions, but the economic recovery remains challenging. Kenji Okamura, Deputy Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, said it is essential to continue the reform momentum under strong ownership by both the authorities and the Sri Lankan people. He noted that continued open dialogue with the creditors will help to reach restructuring agreements to restore debt sustainability in line with the program targets.
The US Congress has approved a deal to lift the country's borrowing limit days before the world's largest economy is due to default on its debt.
The bipartisan measure sped through the Senate by a vote of 63 to 36 a day after it cleared the US House of Representatives. President Joe Biden has said he will enact the measure into law. His signature on the bill will spare the US from a catastrophic default on its $31.4 trillion debt.
Sri Lanka has several headaches ahead of the World Cup qualifiers in 2 weeks' time after suffering a heavy 6-wicket defeat against Afghanistan on Friday.
Sri Lanka brought in experienced Dimuth Karunaratne and Angelo Matthews to the ODI squad to address the team's batting woes. But it was back to square one as they slumped to 84 for the loss of 4, with Matthews and Karunaratne not being able to make big contributions. Charita Salanka held the Sri Lankan innings together with his 7th half-century and went on to score 91 off 95 balls with 12 fours. He was well backed up by Dhananjaya De Silva with 51 as they shared a 99-run partnership for the 5th wicket. Sri Lanka were bundled out for 268 runs in Hambantota. Set a target of 269, Afghanistan got there with 19 deliveries to spare to take the opener of the 3-match one-day international series. Ibrahim Zadran was the hero for the visitors, top scoring with 98 runs. The opening batter took the Sri Lankan quicks to task during the power play as he raced to his half-century in just 35 balls. Zadran, a 21-year-old right-handed batter, settled down after the field restrictions as he added 146 runs with Rahmat Shah for the 2nd wicket as the Afghans proved Sri Lanka's total of 268 was way below par.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News here on TV1. For the News First team, I'm Nazir Khan. Good night and take care.